What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Come with me if you want to live.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
The Force will be with you, always.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 20th Century Geek. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and I am joined by two gentlemen today to talk about their comic book company and some of their upcoming projects and some of the things that I've seen on there that are quite exciting, and also some of their other projects they've had outside of Ahoy Comics, which is what we're going to talk about. We are talking with Tom Peyer and Stuart Moore. Welcome both. How are you doing?
Hi. Nice to be here.
Thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Fitting me in, because I know there's obviously the time difference, which, fit me enjoying your day over there. So, and appreciate that. So I'm going to talk about. So I've know Ahoy really through Hannah, who's your promoter, and I've promoted a couple of things, and I've read some bits and pieces. But Ahoy has come about and really has a sort of a tone, I think. But I want to sort of just throw out to you guys as to where did Ahoy come from between you? Like what's the sort of the secret origin, if you will, of Ahoy Comics?
Well, me and two friends of mine, we live in Syracuse, New York. It's in the middle of the state, and my two friends were working for the daily newspaper, and they both had their jobs erased at about the same time. And where anyone else would want to retire, my masochistic friend Hart Seeley decided that we should get together and start a comic book company because he knew that Frank and I really loved comic books and had a lot of work on them and stuff. And he wanted to control us. No, but he wanted to control us. So we started, and we started to meet on it in January 2017 because we needed something to think about besides the newly installed President Trump. That was when it all started. So it took us a while. I will say, and I always say, I'm glad we didn't know how hard it was going to be to set up a company, or we wouldn't have done it. But we're all glad we did. But we put out our first comics in September of 2018, and have been going ever since. Every month except for when the distributors shut down during the pandemic.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because I mean, on the website, you have, I'd say, like a statement of intent. You got the Ahoy, but you've got like abundance, humor, originality, and then yes. And it's obviously, it's like yes to monthly comics.
We could not do anything for the why.
No, yeah, but I like the yes. But the yes is good because it covers so much. I've got it here. So it's like, yes to monthly comics, yes to collector's editions, yes to meaningful stories and dramatic. It's a welcome. It's like, yes, damn right we're going to do comics.
As Tom said, though, as an acronym, it was sort of transparently reverse engineered. I think. It wasn't.
It absolutely was, but it mentions humor, and that's a big part of what we do. All of our comics are funny on some level. They don't have to be comedies, but they can't be humorless. But we fix them.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing. I think one of the great things it says is the world isn't getting any happier, and it's fair. So what there's a sort of a desire I see a lot of, like dark comics, or they want to do sort of like it's going to be an urban fantasy, but it's going to be we're going to do it dark and sort of stuff, and you go, oh cool, yeah, but can we have I need an injection of humor. I think I sort of raised in the 80s. I think it was always sort of action comedies and horror comedies and everything else. It's always been a part of it that was for me. So I always like the bit of humor in things. And it's definitely coming through in what you guys are doing. And it's So, you know, I'm going to think of all sort of titles that you've got between you two, and, you know, Tom, you've obviously got The Wrong Earth and High Heaven and you know, Hashtag Danger. There's the ones I sort of, you know, picked up on. And it seems like there's that intent to sort of have that humor, but you're trying to explore different things and different ideas as well. Apart from the humor, was there any sort of, you know, when you started out? Go on, sorry, Stuart.
I was just going to say, both of us, both Tom and I worked at the Vertigo imprint at DC in the early days, that our original shorthand for Ahoy was Funny Vertigo, but really, when you look back at those books, the books we were doing back in the '90s, most of them were funny. There was a real dark humor to things like Hellblazer, certainly Preacher, or even Shade the Changing Man. A lot of those early books were Jonah Hex, when Joe Lansdale and Tim Truman were doing it, was practically a comedy. So it's not even as much of a veer as you think.
Yeah. Oh no, it's not. You know, and they were my you know, probably too young for I ain't gonna lie. But like 2000 AD and Vertigo sort of appearing on shelves, and you know, older siblings of other friends, sort of like they're like Hellblazer, Shade the Changing Man, all those. Yeah, they are formative comics for me, and that again, that sort of like introduced me to like satire and you're like, oh, it can be violent and funny and dark and that sort of thing. So, you know, those are big comics for me. What about you know, you've obviously gone through, you said in 2017, you know, you're reintroducing those. You know, you had that in, you sort of started, you produced, you know, those comics were coming out. Was there anything in your head at that time then, Tom, and sort of Stuart, when you came on board, of like, oh, this is what I want to do for Ahoy. This is what I'm bringing in. This is the character or the idea or the story, or what was the formative stories that you wanted to bring in?
Stuart had a great one.
Well, I came in with Tom. First of all, I think you had two projects you were starting with, High Heaven and The Wrong Earth, and the idea of those was that they were very, very different from each other. One was one's a sort of fantasy religious satire and rather dark, High Heaven, and the other was The Wrong Earth, which is a brilliant concept, and we're still running now, about just two night and day heroes who switch worlds. I came in. I had something I'd been playing with the artist June Brigman. It was actually the first time I've ever created a project for an artist, and that was a story called Captain Ginger about cats in space. And for the actually for the 5th anniversary of Ahoy just last fall, we did 2-issue specials with each of those. And The Wrong Earth has a new miniseries running now as well, Dead Ringers. So yeah, that was a case of I had a project that I was developing. I wasn't sure what to do with it. I was maybe going to kickstart it. I wasn't sure, and it wound up fitting in with what Tom and Hart wanted to do with Ahoy.
Cool, yeah. Wrong Earth is one. I've read the first volume of that, and I didn't even know it was Ahoy. I think I sort of came across it a couple of years ago. Actually, I think it was one I read, and I was like, so I've read the first one, and I do enjoy that. It's a good book. When you're doing this, though, obviously, you know, you've obviously got the big two, as everyone sort of refers to. You've got Marvel and DC, and you've got Image, and there's lots of other sort of publishers and stuff out there. And you know, you said how hard it is. Was there any, you know, was there ever a moment you were just sort of like, yeah, you know, I've got these ideas, I could go elsewhere. That you were sort of like, oh, I could go to Boom, or I could go to IDW or Image, or was it no? This is, you know, this is the home for these stories.
Well, once we started it, I would only write for Ahoy.
Yeah.
But Wrong Earth, actually, I came up with beforehand and was going to pitch it to another company in a much inferior form. And I was very lucky when that didn't pan out. But because when Jamal Igle came in, the artist, it just got better and better because he had ideas too. But yeah, no, I couldn't write for another company right now because I work at Ahoy.
So that sort of do you think it's allowed you then to sort of explore and develop stories?
It would be smart to let me write things that don't sell for other companies. I can really do that. I've proven that. But we're not that smart.
I did. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I did a book for Image Comics called Egos in 2014, 2015, and that was a wonderful experience. And I put the whole thing together, and I did the promotion and everything, and I lost so much money on it. Like it wasn't it wasn't Image's fault. They were great. They were really good to deal with. It just like it started off strong as those things do, and it tailed off, And I probably kept it going longer than it was was fiscally responsible, let's say. But I'm proud I did that, and I'm glad I did it for a lot of reasons, because it really gave me a handle on a lot of different aspects of the business. And in the development of Ahoy, what happened was in the early days we brought on a friend of ours named Sven Larsen to handle a combination of production and marketing, and he was instrumental in getting everything going. Just really figuring out the printing situation. Getting us in touch with Diamond. At the time, Diamond really was the only distributor. That's not true anymore. But Sven and I, he lives in New York. We drove down to Baltimore. We road tripped it down to Baltimore one day to present the line in person to Diamond, and they loved it. They were that went better than we'd hoped. And then 2 days after that, he called me and said, "Well, I'm taking a job as a VP at Marvel." So that left a little gap in the organization. And we hadn't launched yet, but we were getting ready. We were scheduled, I think, already to launch in the fall in 2018. And what we wound up doing was bringing in a brilliant guy named Darren Bennett to handle production. And he's been working with us ever since, but he just left to devote more time to his writing. So now we hate him and won't answer his calls. But it's wonderful. He's still. Sorry?
We can't hold on to anyone. It's a terrible place to work.
But I wound up sort of stepping up into what we called the operations position, dealing with distributors, keeping the schedule, just sort of being the hub at the center of the wheel. A lot of which was work I hadn't done before, except very, very loosely on my own projects like Egos. But it's been interesting. It's been as halftime day jobs go, it's a great one. It's a pretty nice gig. So that's kind of how my end of it developed.
It's kind of awkward to have to tell you this now, Stuart, but we're letting you go.
Yeah. There you go. Exclusive. There you go. It's a 20th Century Geek exclusive. You're fired.
That's right. Yep. Well, fortunately, as you may be able to hear, there's a lot of street noise going on here, and so I couldn't hear a thing you said. And you're going to have to, Tom. You're going to have to.
One of the things to say is it's draws. If you've built up the company, like, you look at on the website, you see you've had different sort of creators and some big names in there. You've had lots of people sort of coming through, and you've obviously welcomed a lot more in. I'm not. I was there to dish the dirt, but is it good to build those relationships? Have you pulled on sort of connections you've had in the past and sort of contacted people and said, like, we're doing this. Do you want to have a go? Or has people just knocked on the door and said, this actually feels like it fit with your ethos? Or, how's that sort of worked in with those creators?
All the above, right?
Yeah, all the above.
Okay.
We called on some of our old Vertigo cronies. We've had Peter Milligan and Grant Morrison working for us, and Steve Pugh, a bunch of great people. And I should stop listing names.
Mark Russell came to us because I knew him through my friend Marie Javins, who's editor-in-chief at DC. And we were literally, Tom, you and Hart were staying at a hotel a few blocks from the Javits Center before New York Comic Con one year. And Mark just walked through the lobby and said, "Hey, Stuart." and we just wound up having a little impromptu meeting. And that set up Billionaire Island, the book he did for us, which we had actually signed up before Second Coming, which is more of, it's one of Ahoy's flagship books, probably along with Wrong Earth. And that was a project that was initiated at DC. This has been pretty widely reported, I think, which then got cold feet about the subject matter, where Jesus Christ, the Son of God, returns to Earth and becomes roommates with a superhero.
Yeah.
And so that popped free, and we just jumped at it. And we already had a relationship with Mark, so that came together beautifully.
It did. we celebrated. Me and my partner went out to dinner and celebrated the night we got second coming. It was like weeks of like not knowing and wanting it so badly.
Yeah, it was tense too. We had to crash it through on the schedule a bit. We had to. I remember talking to Diamond a lot, saying, "How late can you hold the catalog? We're getting this, and we want to get it out soon while there's heat on it." And a couple of issues where we wound up having Mark went back and added some pages to the first issue, I think, and we did some stuff with the art and the coloring. But a lot of the initial issues was done already, so we didn't have as much of a production run up on it as we do with a lot of things. Right. So we wanted to get it out. So it was a bit of a like all hands on deck, get this out, get it done, and it was very exciting. Like it was really.
And DC Comics was incredibly helpful.
Wonderful,
just the whole time. They helped us so much.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. That's because often, I think you see clickbait and you see articles. It's usually the sort of the more negative side, isn't it, of like things. So to see, and I like to hear that the industry helps each other out, and it's sort of, they're all there to. Well, we don't really want to publish this right now, but it's good so it can go somewhere else. That
right.
Can give it a home.
A couple of things happened there too. Like we've both worked at DC, and several other people who work with Ahoy have relationships with them as well. That helped. Also, they felt genuinely bad that they liked the book, especially in editorial. They really liked the book. They wanted to do it, and they wanted to find a good home.
Mm. No, that's cool. In the 5 years in sort of of Ahoy, sort of, has there been anything there's comics and sort of there's different things. You've done different experimental things as well, haven't you? Sort of, I know you sort of the Edgar Allan Poe sort of anthology. You've looked at the more humorous side of that, and you've done some prose things as well. And have those introduced sort of more opportunities, or has there been cases where you're like, oof, we bit off more than we can chew at this point, or
No, I love the prose stories. We always fill out our comic book monthly comics with prose stories with little illustrations and stuff, and I love them. I think they really add to it. Like it's the way comic book storytelling is now. Sometimes you can get through a comic book a little too fast.
Yeah.
So we like to give you something so that you can linger with the book a while.
Yeah, and I love that because I think that's something I wholeheartedly agree with. I literally I got my a bunch of deliveries today. Like my pull list sort of arrives from Forbidden Planet. I got like 11, 12 books in there. 2 of them gone in like 10 minutes. Where you're just sort of like, oh, there's barely any dialogue in this, but you're sort of like, I've spent £3 or £4 on this. This is okay, cool, but so yeah. I do appreciate those things.
We did I sort of masterminded a stunt last fall, also for the 5th anniversary, where we did a serialized prose story, which we'd never done before. And I first, just on a whim, I contacted Grant Morrison, who Tom and I both worked with at DC. They also wrote some prose stories when we first launched Ahoy in 2018. And I just asked them if they wanted to kick something off as a way that other people would then write chapters of, and it would finish. And they sent me this novella, brilliant thing, called "Partially Naked Came the Corpse." Actually, the full title was something like the oh God, I can't remember the annual Cozy Detectives Club in Partially Naked Came the Corpse.
Right.
And that wound up running through all the books in the fall. I think in the end it was a little hard to follow, especially like week to week. But I contributed to it, a lot of people, and I brought a few people who hadn't worked with Ahoy. We used it. We brought in mostly a lot of our frequent short story contributors, people like I think Kirk Vanderbeek and God, I'm blanking on the names, but and we've actually found some writers through this too, like some done comics bit. But I sort of worked on it toward the end, and I brought in some people like Torrin Grunback, who writes Thor for Marvel, who had not worked with Ahoy before. So it was kind of a fun experience. It was I would love to collect it all in one volume, but none of us can seem to figure out how to make that commercially viable. So
I don't know, because that was literally my question. I mean, two things is I can imagine anytime you want a story to be at least starting off an interesting point. Grant Morrison, interesting place to start. If you can imagine giving them the opportunity to provide an opening chapter, that's going to go anywhere. So that's kind of fascinating stuff. But I think if you've got those names, like that, you mentioned those names. I was going to ask the question. Cool, has this been collected? Because that sounds pretty awesome. You know, even if you did it as a Kickstarter and did it as a we're going to do it collected, that'd be cool.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's other, you can do different versions, but that sounds ace. And I love the fact you're able to experiment where other publishers can't and do those kinds of things. I think this is the thing with as you sort of said, Tom, this thing of sort of with comic books. I still love them. I am a massive comic books fan, but you're right. I think there's at the moment there's a lack of experimentation sometimes in some of the main ones where I think you guys in sort of smaller publishers and smaller press can do that, and I think it's really exciting to see those at times. So yeah, that's really cool. Let's just we'll inject some of the stuff because to say this that you are doing so. You've got some big names and some big things coming up. And so we'll insert those now so we can sort of talk about those because it's worth doing so I don't forget. But I've got the coming soon, so we'll circle back some stuff. But we'll tick through about how they came about. So the first one is Babs.
Yep, Babs is really good and really funny. It's written by Garth Ennis and drawn by Jason Burrows, and it's a I call it sword and satire. It's a very broad, at times very dumb, kind of dirty comedy about a sword and sorcery, a barbarian woman who is a thief and a reaver and a slayer and all that stuff. And she has like really, all she wants is to get rich, and she has really terrible luck because awful people keep getting in her way. I can't. Is there anything else you want to say about that, Stuart?
Just that it's Garth's been a friend of mine since we worked together on Hellblazer when he was 20 years old, and and he still lives in New York. We get together every once in a while, and it's just great to be working with him again.
Yeah, no, again, that was fun. I'm a big fan. Again, just literally, I've got the Garth Ennis sort of omnibus of Hellblazer. Jason Burrows is one of my favorite artists. I think came across him when he worked with Alan Moore on Necronomicon. Yeah, this with the Lovecraft stuff and Neonomicon. Thank you. Yeah. And then he jumped on and did a series on Moon Knight with my friend, and so I've always sort of followed him as an artist. So it's exciting to see those two coming together to create a sword and sorcery story. It'd be fantastic.
Yeah, they've become a very smooth team. Like they've done a lot of work together now. They did Crossed. That got a lot of attention. They've done a few projects at Marvel. They have one called Get Fury, I think, coming out right now or very soon. Yeah. So they're Garth sometimes gets this way with his artists. They're almost telepathic. You can tell, like, they just know what each other's thinking. They're just a really smooth team. And Jason's work on this is gorgeous. Like, I love his work anyway, but it's so detailed and beautiful.
He's one of those artists that seems to know when to provide detail and when not. Do you know what I mean? So there's sort of panels where it's very basic, but it's still very effective. So yeah, I love his smooth style. So when's that coming out? When's Babs issue 1? When's that dropping?
That's in August 14th.
Oh, summer blockbuster, fantastic.
Exactly.
The second one is an interesting one. Again, was coming from an interesting source. Is the Toxic Avenger? Because obviously we've got the new film coming out towards the end of this year, I believe. And there's Toxic Avenger #1 coming from Ahoy Comics as well later in the year.
Yeah, that's it. That'll be in October. That is the first time we'll publish something that stars a character that people have heard of before the comic comes out. Excited about that. We think we might really have something here, and it's so Ahoy. It's really funny. It's really edgy and dark a little bit, but also satirical. And we have a wonderful creative team. Matt Bors, who writes Justice Warriors for us, and he used to. He was a political cartoonist, a great one. He had a magazine called The Nib of political cartoons, and he grew up on the Toxic Crusaders cartoon, which so it's been like a lifelong dream of his to write this character. And so he made the initial contact with Troma and with us. saying, "Can you guys get together and do this? Would you like to do this?" And we ended up having a really easy time with Trauma, and they were just the studio that owns Toxic Avenger, and they were so pleasant to deal with and reasonable in all of our negotiations, and so it's going to happen. We're thrilled to actually hand you something you've heard of.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I've seen, obviously for the press releases out there, go search for it because the artwork for it, I've seen some of the cover art and stuff.
The artwork by Fred Harper. He is the perfect draw this. He did Highball with you, Stuart, and Nelson with Paul Constant, and a story with me in our Edgar Allan Poe anthology. And his stuff is very, at the same time, it's very controlled and very beautiful, and also very wild and surreal and bizarre. And he's just perfect for this. And he's so gifted.
It looks great. I mean, it's beautiful. It's very colorful.
Fred's been around for a while, and he also does beautiful illustrative stuff for magazines and things. But I think he's best in something like this or Snelson, where he can really sort of break out a bit and go a little bit more caricature and exaggerated, and in the case of Toxie, grotesque as well. I love what he's doing in this. It's amazing.
This comic again. This comic will make you laugh and make you puke.
Yeah, that's a pull line right for the book cover. That's fantastic.
We'll workshop that one a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that's perfect. I think it's fine. No, I mean, I love the Toxic Avenger. It's again, Troma is. They have those sort of ebbs and flows, don't they? They sort of like, I know Toxie and sort of like, they've done those films that have over the time that sort of more hit than miss in sometimes and more miss than hit in others. But they feel like Troma films kind of feels like they're they deserve to be refound and become, like a new cult awakening for them. Like they deserve to have that sort of people revisit them and stuff. So hopefully this is something that'll open that door to them.
They just started their own streaming service.
Oh, really?
Really? But you can get a streaming service that's all Troma stuff.
They're so enthusiastic to work with. Like, I love when they send emails back. You just send them something, they send an email back that says, "That's toxie-rific."
That's commitment. There you go. They're committed to it. That's fantastic. That's very exciting. I think this is a big one, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this one. That's coming out. When's issue 1 of Toxic Avenger dropping?
It is October 9th.
October. Perfect. So just in time for Halloween, which as well. So you get the sort of the grossness and just in time for that time of year.
This could change. I think the trade paperback is tentatively scheduled for April Fool's Day 2025. So
wonderful.
So that's appropriate.
Excellent timing.
I'm sorry?
Is it really going to come out on April Fool's Day, or are we just?
That's when I have it. But we'll see. Things change.
You should just announce it for April Fool's Day and not do it.
Yeah. Other things coming more recently. You've got more stuff. You've got Justice Warriors.
Matt Borzik. That's a wonderful satire with Ben Clarkson, who's a wonderful artist who's done a lot of work for television, Adult Swim here.
Okay. It's
the second Justice Warrior story, but you can jump right in. It's not like a continuity heavy thing, but the Justice Warriors it's the story of this police department set in a isolated bubble city full of rich people, and their job is to go out and police the vast slum, which they call the uninhabited zone, and it's full of people who don't matter, mutants and stuff. And so it's a highly satirical look at policing cities. And in this second installment, the city is run by a guy called the Prince, who never really does his work as mayor, as the guy who runs the city. He's always trying to, he's always like recording pop songs and coming up with weird ideas to get rich and stuff. And this time, he's blindsided because they have to have an election, which he's never heard of, the idea of election. So it's the story of it's a wild satire of all the things that can be wrong and crazy about an election. Coming out just in time, we decided to put this out as a graphic novel instead of our usual comics followed by a collection, because we wanted to get the story complete and out there while people can still stomach elections.
Is it called Vote Hard or something like that? Is it called?
That's Justice Warriors Vote Harder.
Yeah, Vote Harder. Yeah. Nice.
It's really great.
Yeah. It's like you say, it's all relevant. I mean, you know, I know over on your side of things, there's you're running up to November, and it's obviously a very important election. They've literally just announced a general election over here as well yesterday. And we'll be having our general election on July 4th is when we have our general election now. So keeping it tight. So yes, it is very relevant. So, you know, vote harder. Everyone out there, vote and you know, rightly vote. You know what I mean?
Yeah, don't just vote at random.
Yeah, please, like make it consider what you're voting for.
It's that'll be out September 12th.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you've literally we've got August, September, October. So you've got some really big things coming sort of across that period. It's fantastic. And Stuart, you were saying more recently, there's another one coming very soon, which is you got Project Cryptid.
Project Cryptid is coming out now, and the book is
well, last week actually. I think it should be out by now.
Last week. That's the brainchild of our senior editor Sarah Litt, and it's wonderful. It's kind of what the title says. It's a short story anthology about cryptids, you know, Bigfoot and Loch Ness monster, and you know the monster. There are so many of these creatures. I guess what distinguishes them from other monsters is that some people believe in all of them, and she's put together some great people to tell wild stories that are very different from each other.
Excellent. I love it. Yeah, I'm
like Stuart.
So yeah, Stuart, have you got a story in there?
Yeah, the collection that just came out collects issues 1 through 6, and right now soliciting is issue 11, which I think is the last issue of the current run. And I've got a story in there called Devil's Playground, which is about the Jersey Devil. And it's actually the second story in Project Cryptid about Jersey Devil. The first one was written by Darren Bennett, and he and I managed to write, because he lives in Jersey. I grew up in Jersey, and mine is sort of it's kind of inspired by the story of Action Park, which I don't know if you've heard of over there, but it was this impossibly dangerous amusement park that existed in North Jersey all through the 1980s and 90s. There's a hilarious documentary about it on Netflix called Class Action Park. And kids would just go there and get maimed and drown and all this. And the guy who owned it was just kind of he would just pay off politicians. He refused to ever settle a lawsuit. So he would just he would just fight and fight and fight. And eventually these things catch up with you and the thing had to close down. But in my story, it's run by the Jersey Devil, who's a mythical creature we heard about growing up, who lives supposedly in the woods. And it's really, though, a tribute to all the screw up kids I went to high school with, you know, and in particular a bunch of people I worked with on the dinner shift in the kitchen of a retirement home where I worked right after high school. Which the thing one of the things I remember most about that was this isn't in the story, this isn't in the cryptid story, but one night the Cars were big at that point, the band. And one night and everybody who worked there was just crazy about the Cars. And one night they played the Philadelphia Spectrum, and we were on a skeleton crew. I don't know how those old people got fed that night, because there was barely any of us there to deliver the food and clean the pots and whatever. The other fun time was the time we stole a pie. That was fun, and that ended in a classic pratfall or poetic justice moment where one guy, the handsome guy who worked there, who was also about 17, was just like distracting the older woman cook and just like talking to her like this, while somebody else grabs the pie and carries it out to the like he's practically under his shirt, like carries it through the kitchen, hiding from all the other people, brings it out into the employee lounge, puts it down on one of those chairs with an open back, pushes it under the table, and the pie goes splat right down on the floor on its own. And then our supervisor comes in and says, "Hey, how's it going?" And we all had to try not to laugh so he wouldn't notice the splattered pie on the floor. So that was my high school, pretty much. So, anyway, Project Cryptid, number 11, on July 24th, soliciting now.
So yeah, but it sounds like you've got a lot coming on. So I mean, really, big question is, I'm not predicting for the big future, but where would you like to see Ahoy go? I mean, what is the dream from your point of view? If you could have that, you have that vision. Where do you see it going, or where would you want it to go?
Well, any publisher would tell you that they would like to become even more profitable.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I think we're in a pretty good place. I don't look at our comics and think I wish we were doing something else. We're at a particular scale. It's a fairly small scale, which is manageable to run. If we had 80 employees and put out 20 books a month, it would be very different and probably not as good. But
so you sort of, keep the scale, keep the quality, and do what it is you love doing, really.
I think what we're hoping kind of is that a few projects like Babs and the Toxic Avenger raise the company's profile a bit, so that we just get more readers in general, and that expands to the rest of the line. Does that sound fair, Tom? Does that sound about right?
Sounds so much better than my answer.
I wouldn't say that.
No, that's fair, and I think they are. Those two sound like Toxic Avenger in particular. Say with the film company, if it hit, that could ride that wave, and that sounds like it could be a really good entry point to everything else, to open up that catalogue to those people that once they enter are going to find sort of, say Captain Ginger, Wrong Earth, all these other books are going to go, oh, actually, sort of that sounds fantastic. So hopefully that's what happens. So and we just, ladies and gentlemen, listen to us. We will be returning to those. I am going to be getting. I have already sort of, got it marked on my calendar for Toxic Avenger in particular. I will put Babs in as well. So I have it in for when the film comes out. I'm going to be doing a Toxic Avenger retrospective. So we will be doing all the Toxic films. So we will obviously introduce the comic as well in there, because I do want to talk about both the cartoon and the original sort of comic that came off the back of that as well, because that was something I had as a kid. So yeah, fingers crossed. I'm definitely sort of will be helping with that if we can.
Matt Boris is a great person to talk to about the Toxic Avenger.
We'll get. So that's there you go. Another one. So I will be reaching out. We'll see if we can get him involved with that. So we'll see what we can do in that. Other things outside though, I mean, Stuart in particular, sort of. I didn't realise I already had something of yours on my bookshelf. So I was just going through your book, and I'm a big fan of John Carter, and I've got and I'm also a big fan of movie novelizations. So I was quite excited when I saw, oh, that's fantastic. So you've at the John Carter movie novelization, and you've done some Marvel adaptations as well. But I'm actually a big advocate for this movie. I was so so.
I'm glad to hear. I liked that movie as well. We're talking about John Carter. And yeah, that was an interesting project, because I was asked to write it to a pretty short length, and the movie was so packed. And I actually think one of the reasons, there's a lot of theories about why that movie didn't do as well as most of us think it should have. But I think one of them is that it was a little too packed with stuff, and the final cut I thought was edited too tight. I had access to all the reference, and all the work they did on the sky ships was just beautiful. Like, it was gorgeous, and it goes by in a flash on screen, like you barely see it. So there's a lot of that happened. Otherwise it was fun to write. That was one of the first scripts things where I remember, like, everything's done through digital assets now, but that was long enough ago. that they sent me a printed script with a little Mickey Mouse hologram head on the corner of every page that supposedly would I don't know, turn black if I tried to photocopy it, or radio in my location to Disney headquarters or something. Like I don't. But it was pretty funny. It was so yeah, that was good. I do remember right after I did that, I think it was Peter David asked me. He said, "Weren't you intimidated, like just writing the novelization, especially when you know it's bound into that volume along with the original novel by Edgar Rice Burroughs?" And I said, "No, I just that was his story. This was theirs. This is mine. So that didn't even enter my mind really. But yeah, I was glad to do that. The last few years, I've sort of alternated my work with Ahoy, mostly with writing Marvel novels of one kind or another. I've just done a few for the company Aconite that were huge, big scale books, Target Kree and Into the Dark Dimension, and that's been a great deal of fun. Unfortunately, they're not doing them anymore. I'm talking with Marvel about doing a couple of nonfiction projects now.
Oh wow,
See how
that'd be exciting. Yeah. No, I always thought the novelizations of I am a big movie novelization fan. Like I've got tons.
all right.
They're even like some really weird ones that I've come across, and I love the variances. The sort of two favorites are is it Return of the Swamp Thing? The guy who wrote that didn't like the movie, so just wrote his own story, basically. And it was too late to make any changes, so they ended up publishing it. So there's little things like that. So I'm assuming you couldn't really do that with Disney, but
well, not in that case. But
No.
There have been other ones like that. I'm kind of fascinated with books like that too. There's a wonderful old novelization of the original Lost in Space by a couple of guys, Dave Van Arnhem and Ted White, who were big in science fiction fandom editors at the time and stuff. And it just kind of goes way off. The Prisoner novelizations were like that too. The ones published in the 60s and 70s, they're berserk. There's one by Thomas Dish, who was quite a really great science fiction writer at the time. They're just kind of way off the series. They just sort of go their own way.
Do they happen anymore? Novels of movies?
Sporadically.
I think less, but yeah, they do. They do. My understanding is that, and obviously, I understand why you asked that, because like they're less valuable in a way, because they used to be the memento of the movie. Back when you couldn't just rewatch it, you couldn't watch a movie over and over again. Now they're a little bit less useful that way, but I think people still like them. And my impression, just having navigated that world a little bit, is that whether you see one or not depends a lot on the particular quirks of the licensor and the corporation, and what they expect from a property and how they plan to roll it out. Disney still does some stuff. I think they still do various different ones.
Yeah, Warner Brothers. It's interesting. So I'll say it is interesting because I Warner Brothers, especially like with the DCEU, when they were doing that, they did like Man of Steel, they did Suicide Squad, and then that was it. I think actually. And you're like, okay, well, that's not even all of your films. Like, that's bizarre. And so, yeah, but they've done all the Godzilla films. Each of the Godzilla films, the most recent ones, have all had a novelization and think.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Which it seems kind of, again, it's a very visual, like, story, so it's, I love collecting them because I think they're so odd. And then obviously, some of the older ones, just the fact that they're obviously based on sometimes pre-production scripts and variances, and the Predator one is based on the original script and the original Predator design, so it has a whole different ending and all these other things. So they're very odd. They're little oddities of film history, which is cool. So
I may be remembering this wrong, but I believe the novelization of Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan ends with Spock's coffin burning up in orbit.
It does.
So
yes,
you're never going to see Spock again after that.
Yes.
That Search for Spock novelist that revealed.
Yeah.
Wondered
it. Yeah, there's some great ones of that. So, but no, that I was very cool. That's very exciting. But anyway, we shall, we'll come to an end. So,
if I can, I was going to mention one other project that's coming out that that is kind of, it's not Ahoy, but it's vaguely something Tom and I both had a hand in, which is DC is publishing a tribute to the writer Rachel Pollack, who died last year. And Tom edited a lot of her work at DC. I had brought her over because I knew her from science fiction circles, and they've done they're doing a nice collection of one of her best Doom Patrol stories, which you edited. Her brother Power the Geek special, which I think you initiated that and then you left or something. Yeah, with Michael Allred, and that's a lovely piece of work. But I had a lot of I had a lot of fun writing. I got to tell sort of the stories of what happened in those days. That'll be out, I think, June 10th, so pretty soon.
Oh wow,
Great.
Cool. That's exciting. Yeah. So that's coming out via DC.
Yes, it's called DC Pride: A Celebration of Racial Politics, or something like that.
Oh wow, cool, fantastic. Yeah, so it's coming out in June. Wonderful, excellent. Well, guys, thank you very much for coming on 20th Century Geek and talking Ahoy Comics. I'm sure this is I'm hoping going to open up some things for the future. We will be back in the future. I will be reaching out to Matt, probably through you guys, to talk some Toxic Avenger in the future, and I will be talking Babs and some of the bits and pieces. But thank you very much. Just want to say, so where can people find Ahoy Comics? If they wanted to find out more about Ahoy Comics, where can they go and how can they follow you?
Well, then go to comicsahoy.com, where we keep pretty up-to-date listings of our upcoming comics.
I need to get back to that, but yes.
Just take that back. And we're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, all under different names. But if you search Ahoy Comics, you'll find it. And
I think it's Ahoy Comic Mags on Twitter, Ahoy Comics on Instagram, Comics Ahoy on Facebook, and Blue Sky. I have no idea. I don't know.
We're trying not to be found.
Yes. Well, it's like a treasure hunt. It's part of the fun, It's a bit
fun.
It is. Well, I think what we'll do is down in the notes below, ladies and gentlemen, on your podcast catcher, there will be a link to the Ahoy Comics website. So do go check that. That's always the best place to start, because all the links to the social media are from there. That's what I found a lot. And also just ask for your local comic distributor. Where do you get your pull list from? I get from Food and Planet, and that's where I've sort of, I've actually pre-ordered some stuff from there. So go do that. That's the easiest way to do it sometimes. And there'll be links to that as well. So, but Tom, Stuart, thank you very much for making time in your day to talk on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Good luck with those other launches, and hopefully, we'll be promoting some more. We'll be promoting some more stuff for you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Another great 20th Century Geek episode. Thank you for listening. If you would like to get in contact to suggest topics for future shows, or just chat about everything nerdy, you can email me at 20thcenturygeek@gmail.com. That's 20thcenturygeek@gmail.com. Or find me on social media, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Just search for 20th Century Geek. If you would like to support the show, please go on your podcast catcher and leave a 5-star review. I would greatly appreciate it. It raises the show in the ranks and lets more people know about the podcast. If you want to show more support for the podcast, we do have an Amazon wish list. Just go on Amazon and search for 20th Century Geek, and you will find a list of books that will help with research for future podcasts. And don't forget, we love second-hand books in 20th Century Towers. Once again, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.